Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back again. But before we get into the main discussion, what's the best recent thing you guys have seen last week, guys?
So the best thing I watched in the past week was the Brother's Son, which we mentioned last week. I finished that now, and it's wonderful. Everybody should go watch it. It's just a really solid drama, good characters, just good all around. But the most interesting thing I watched this week was Morbius, actually. So it hit Netflix last week, and I didn't see it when it was in the cinema, but I had seen the memes, and everybody seems to agree that it's the worst thing ever made. So I decided to just give it a shot because if it's on Netflix anyway, I might as well check it out. And honestly, I think it's the reputation that it's gotten seems pretty undeserved. People talk about it like it's the worst movie I made. Complete cash grab, has no reason to exist, is like this baffling fever dream of a movie. People talk about how eccentric Jared Leto is. And honestly, I think it's fine. I think it's a pretty decent superhero movie. It's got all the weird things about the Venomverse, where it's basically made from the scraps of the Spider-Man IP, and it's about supervillains who aren't really villains, and it's all a bit weird. And I'm curious to see where they take that this year. But the movie itself is actually fine. I understand who the characters were and what they did and why they did it. The movie's about something, has some interesting ideas in it. It's pretty decent, in my opinion.
Guys, the reason why I was not laughing, I was smiling so hard during Daniel's speech. By the way, everything he said was I actually understand, and he actually went more into depth when we spoke about it before. Obviously, he just wants to give you like his quick.
I'm not claiming that it's a masterpiece or anything, or
no.
Good movie. It clearly has some issues. Like there's some scenes that are torn apart in editing, and there's entire subplots that are cut out, and you can see kind of the seams around the edges and stuff like that. But honestly, I think this is one of those movies where the quality is being judged by its reputation, when it should be the other way around. Like people just decided that it's trash. I think that's way overhyped. It's a decent take on sci-fi vampires. It avoids some of the cliches of vampire movies that I always find annoying, like giving the hero an out. The hero is a vampire, but they don't have to drink blood. The movie doesn't do this, and in fact makes a plot point out of it. The villain actually wins the argument in the end. There's interesting things in there, and I think it would, if it wasn't called Morbius and it wasn't part of the Sony Spider-Verse, the Spider-less Spider-Verse, then I think it would have been much better received. And if Jared Leto wasn't such an eccentric weirdo, then it also would have gotten a better reputation.
Listen, I'm not laughing at what you're saying. Listen, like I said, you actually went in depth, and it's just one of those situations where it's an agree to disagree situation. You made some good points. I was only laughing because I remember the day I went to go and watch that film, and I didn't watch no movie reviews whatsoever, so I was going there open-minded. Daniel, I kid you not, the person that I went with, we literally halfway in the film, even though the film was so short, we said we didn't care. We literally left the cinema, started chilling outside a bit, just talking, and then we went back in. That's just how disappointed we were of the film. And I had high hopes for this film. I don't know who I was talking to with, but I remember I said, I'm looking forward to this movie. And for me personally, it just underperformed.
What was it that was so terrible?
It was, from what I could remember, I remember that it was very rushed. It felt like I was watching a short film. And this film deserved for it to go into detail. Especially, you made a good point about the disabilities that they had. Was it disabilities or was it a critical illness?
They're like a blood disease.
Yeah. They should have gone more into that, for example. Yeah. And honestly, I watched it so long ago. I just remember the feeling that I had from the movie. So I don't remember. That was one of my main points, that the film was just too short. It should have gone into more depth when it comes to the film. But from the feeling, I specifically remember the feeling. I just knew that I was disappointed. Now, I wasn't one of those people that was going on social media slating the film. I'm not that type of movie critic. I'll watch a film. If I don't like it, I'll just, is what it is. I'm not going to slate the film because, like I said, I want to be, I like movies and I commend people that try. I'm saying making the film is not easy. But I was just one of those people that wasn't impressed, man. It just, for me, it wasn't good. As in, it wasn't bad, but it was below expectation. I think that is what pissed off people the most. So I do agree. It wasn't as bad as some people were making it seem like it was the worst film ever made. No, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't that. I just think it was below par. Crazy enough, I actually thought that was a Marvel film. I don't know why I thought that was a Marvel film. When I saw that, I was like, okay, the state of, well, that's a villain, but the state of this superhero movies, that was, for me, that was the start of the fall.
I think it had a lot to do with how low my expectations were. I was expecting a complete dumpster fire, and I got a pretty decent movie with some interesting ideas in it. Maybe if if that whole discourse hadn't happened, then maybe I would have had high expectations and would have been more disappointed. And there are very clear faults in it. It's just, if somebody hasn't watched it because of its reputation, then it's maybe worth checking out if you like the idea of vampires in a superhero universe. And it's not even really in a superhero universe. It doesn't mention Venom or anybody else. It's really just about two people who have this chronic illness and have basically been preparing to die their entire lives and get immortality and react in very different ways to it. And then that's the conflict between them. That's basically the gist of it. Like, it's not a so bad it's good movie or even just a complete disaster. It's just pretty good, or it's adequate.
As someone who hasn't watched Morbius, Daniel, I accept your challenge. I'll give it a watch, and might not be the next episode. Maybe a couple of weeks, I'll come and give you my opinion on it.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what you think about it, because it doesn't seem like most people who have strong opinion, like the degree to which somebody has a strong opinion about this doesn't seem to be based in what the movie's actually like. It seems to be more about joining in, in the pylon, and I think that's both misleading and not very interesting. So yeah, I'm curious to see what you think about it.
Cool. I will do. I don't really have a best thing I watched recently. I mean, I think I mentioned Blue Eye Samurai on the last episode. I finished that last week. What a brilliant series. I actually haven't watched much in the past week or so. I did give the Justice League movie, the animated movie, Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earth, a watch. That was very much just like background TV. It's one of those ones, if you're a fan of like DC animated movies, you might like it. If you're not, then it's not really worth checking out. But one point I will say on it is, I think there's been some leaps in terms of animation and sort of storytelling within sort of the animated animation medium. And I feel like the DC sort of animated universe probably needs to lean into some of the sort of kind of modern sort of animation style and some of the sort of modern storytelling that's being used in animated shows. So that's my thing. If you're a fan of DC animated movies, maybe worth a watch. If not, don't bother.
There's some really good DC animated movies. Have you seen the Under the Red Hood?
That's not one that I've watched. I've dabbled here and there with DC animated movies, but that's not one I've watched.
That's probably one of the best. And I think if they made that story at that quality level in live action, people would lose their minds, especially after the last 10 years of DC movies. Mm-hmm. What I find interesting about the DC animated movies is also that they kind of prove that it's not that hard to do a decent version of these characters.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that basically means the live action movies have even less of an excuse to be the way they are, or be the way they have been.
I don't even remember what the film was called, but I watched it last week. It was with the girl from Euphoria, the romantic comedy.
Anyone But You.
Yes, Anyone But You. I watched that film. That was pleasantly, surprisingly good. It wasn't outstanding, but the reason why I found it good because I'm not really a big fan of comedy. So this was like a rom-com. It was a rom-com. It was good. There were definitely parts that made me laugh. For those who don't know what it's about, quick synopsis. One day, a girl, she basically met a guy at a cafe. They hit it off. They spent a night together, and then she left, and then she forgot to get the number. Then she was going to go back, and then the guy thought she literally walked out on him. So she caught him chatting rubbish about her, saying that girl was just when guys' pride's hurt. So then they'll just start chatting rubbish. So then she heard that. Then weeks later, her sister's sister was getting married to the guy's friend's sister. So then they go on vacation for the wedding, and then a bunch of wahala ends up happening where a bunch of situations, rom-com, and then he's, pretty much a typical rom-com. So yeah, so that's literally what the film's about. It was good. It was good. I enjoyed it. A lot of girls are in that cinema. This is definitely one of those ones. There's like it felt like a 50 Shades of Grey type of atmosphere. The way it was, love was in the air, man. Love was in the air. I wouldn't be surprised if people start downloading Tinder after that. But yeah, man, it was a good film. Would I recommend? I don't know. But okay, guys. Now, the main event.
The Beekeeper.
It gives you an emotional release that's justified and delivered by Jason. I'm not even going to say his second name, so you guys are going to have to help me there. Statham, point number 1. Point number 2, memorable choreography. And my final point, it's a Jason Statham film. Now, what I mean by all three. The first one, the emotional release. When we saw the traumatic experience that happened in the beginning, the anger I felt and the sorrow made me feel justified and good about myself when Jason was doing his things against the enemies, the pagans, the antagonists. You know what I'm saying? And also the memorable choreography. Listen, this is a Jason Statham film that kind of falls into my last point. This film, his movie is not really known for its good script writing. It's known for its entertainment value. This film is fun. You're gonna go to this film and you're gonna enjoy this film. Memorable choreography, the fight scenes for me, I liked them a lot. I wouldn't say I loved them, but I liked them a lot. I enjoyed this film, man. I had real fun, real good fun. I haven't felt fun like that. I want to say in a long time, but I just want to go. Sometimes you just want to go to a film and just have fun. You don't really want to, initiate the brain cells to think about what just happened. Sometimes you just want to go into a film and you want to just feel emotions, and that's exactly what this film will produce inside you. Daniel, I don't know why. I feel like Daniel's just burning over there. He's burning.
Can I go?
Just say we have stuff to talk about.
We have stuff. So can I go? Can I go?
Please.
Because I definitely felt emotions. Because when I walked out the cinema, I called my brother who'd watched the movie the day before and was raving about it, and I told him this is the worst movie I've ever watched in my life. In my life. Now I've calmed down since then. But that was my initial reaction coming out of the movie. Like, that was the biggest waste of my time watching that movie, like from the get-go. Like, and I went into it very neutral. I went into it, I like Jason Statham. I've liked, a lot of his previous movies, things like The Transporter, The Mechanic. Those are sort of, movies I've enjoyed in the past. This one, my God, this was awful. Like, literally, from the dialogue. I know you said that you liked the choreography. I was not entertained at all at any point. There was maybe one fight scene towards the end, which I actually enjoyed. I enjoyed the choreography of which we'll touch on in the spoiler section. The action I didn't like. The story was so stupid. Like, the story was just completely taking me out of the movie. It was, and I know you're meant to go into these movies and you're meant to switch your brain off. I've never been, a lover of action movies. There are some, some good ones, but I do feel like in the past couple of years we've been given some very, very good action movies. And bear in mind, it doesn't have to hit the levels of a John Wick, or it doesn't have to hit the levels of Mission Impossible, but those are the standards in there. And this one fell extremely below those targets.
Now I can kind of see why we don't say the same thing in this film, because I did not like Mission Impossible, but carry on.
Okay, cool, fair. And yeah, there was literally, like, the characters were so, like, I don't know who these writers are. Like, you'll have these tech bros that they write into some of these movies, and then they're the most cringe characters I've ever seen. Like, I've never come across a person like that in my life, and it frustrates me every time I see them in any movie. I don't think there's many positives I can say about this movie. It was just, genuinely, I've never come out of a movie hating it as much as I did that movie. And I've come down since, and it's probably not the worst movie in the world. And, there'll be people that go in there and they enjoy some of the action and stuff like that. But for me, none of it worked. None of it landed. Daniel, take over.
So I think I'm a little bit less radicalized than Hervé is, but it's still, like, this movie was written by a 12-year-old. It doesn't really work as an action movie because I thought the action choreography is both too grounded and too basic to be really exciting. There were a couple of different shots that I said, okay, oh, that's neat, but it's kind of the same two moves over and over again. There's not a lot of set pieces, or there are set pieces, but they're not terribly impressive. It's just been done much better many times. As a revenge movie, I didn't think it really worked because it's too abstract and too impersonal. As a social allegory, it doesn't really work, or a social satire, it doesn't really work, because the minute you think about it for 5 seconds, it really stops working. And I don't think the movie has anything to say, interesting or otherwise, about the topic that it claims to satirize. So I don't think there's much redeeming in there.
Guys, I'll be honest with you. I think both of you don't just appreciate the entertainment value when it comes to films. I feel like that's the last thing on your list. I think one of the first things on you guys' list is it has to make sense. What I'm saying sounds a bit mad, but of course films have to make sense. But I feel like you guys think a film each point should make sense. Like nothing can be exaggerated.
No, but it can. Like I enjoy like Marvel movies, and not all of them make sense. Some of it's exaggerated. This one, like even what kind of
Marvel's
movie?
an exception though, because that's a sci-fi fantasy. So like by default, it's not going to make sense.
But like with this one, like just nothing, like literally nothing was working in this movie. And like I said, I went into it with high hopes. I really do like Jason Statham, but from the first minute, it was just stale. Like they wanted you to care about this like relationship between Jason Statham and this woman, and I was just like, it felt like they were reading off a script. It felt very stale. It felt very awkward to listen to, and that did not change throughout the movie as people were like kind of interacting and stuff like that. None of it, like it didn't leave me. Like there was at no point in the movie where I could just like sit back and enjoy it, because there was like this like jarring thing like while I was watching it, that this just everything feels like fake. Everything feels almost, I can't find the word.
But I get what you're saying, because I'll agree. There was some instances, especially with the daughter's performance and the way she reacted to certain situations, that didn't make sense to me. Like when she discovered her mum, or the aftermath of her discovering her mum's death, it didn't feel like she was hurt whatsoever. Like she showed, okay, cool, a moment where she was crying a bit when she literally saw her mum dead on the couch. But after that, it did feel like we didn't really see much. It did feel rushed, especially, and I do agree with the interaction with Jason and the mum in the beginning when he said to her, "Oh, no one's ever looked after me." I'm like, okay, like,
all right, cool.
Yeah, like, how did we get to this point? So yeah. I do agree, but I disagree with the characters being annoying. There are some characters that were annoying, but there was some interaction in the film, especially with the daughter and sidekick or her.
Like, and you know, when you were saying about her not having the emotional reaction, the sidekick literally said, "Do you enjoy watching houses burning down? Oh, guess what? Your mum's house is burning down as well." Like, how do you say that to someone that's just lost their mum? Like, I don't understand. Like, how is that written down in someone's group that he said? And then she's just like, "Oh yeah, cool. Let's go see my mum's house burning down that you'd have childhood memories in and stuff." Like, okay.
Yes, I do like agree to an extent, and I don't think that's her. Like, I don't think that's the actress's fault. I think the director should have picked up. I'm pretty sure that's what the director was looking for. But that just didn't work. There were just certain situations where we should have seen more vulnerability in her. We didn't see that. So
I thought the emotional stuff in the beginning is the part that worked. So I believed that Adam Clay character kind of had, for the first time in his life, allowed himself to feel something for another person, in this case, his neighbor. And then that's why he took it so personally. I believe that. I believe the grief of the daughter, right, who is an FBI agent, apparently the world's worst FBI agent. And has this grief when her mother dies, and under these circumstances, and then is first of all, the fact that she's assigned the case in the first place is like the first sign that this is not going to be very believable.
Typically in the movie they're like, oh, maybe a bit of conflict or whatever. They didn't even say it. They just assigned the case. They're like, here you go. Okay.
Yeah. But everything, for me, the problem was everything that came after that. So I have a bunch of big problems with this. But the biggest one would be that nobody acts the way they should. FBI agents don't act like FBI agents. Criminals don't act like criminals. Politicians don't act like politicians. SWAT and Secret Service people don't act like people with that kind of background. Everything is kind of like a child's version of how these things work. Because the plot is built on that, it doesn't work for me at all. Like halfway through, I just stopped caring about anybody, because especially once it became clear who the Danforth character was and who the Queen was, that was just something. Like at that point, I just gave up and just let the movie happen. But at that point, the movie lost any emotional involvement I had in it.
Speaking of emotion, I think the reason why I'm viewing this different from you guys, because like I said, I'll be honest, I enjoyed the film, but I think the reason why I'm seeing it from a different lens is because like it kind of pulled my emotional heartstrings, because I've actually experienced someone
after the first 15 minutes.
Still after the first 15 minutes, I personally feel like the first 15 minutes. Yeah, even after the first 15 minutes, yeah, because the reason why is because I've experienced someone that's been, a friend of mine, his account, I don't know how to this day, he saw that email and he inserted his details, but they took his money. And obviously I saw how that affected him. So like I said, for me, it was like an emotional release because sometimes you just want to go crazy on evil people because we live in a world filled with evil humans. So for me, like I said, this was like an emotional release. I thought justified that, you know what, I understand why he's doing it. And sometimes I wish I can do that, but I can't for many reasons. I'm Christian and I don't want to go to prison. So do you get what I'm saying? So personally, for me, I had that emotional connection already to the film off the get-go, especially when I saw the mother cry and I saw her, you know what I'm saying, with her reaction to her losing all her money, my heartstrings pulling. Yep. And that's when the rest of it was just going to be good to me either way, because I was like, he's literally, for me, taking out that's the anger that I'm feeling right now. He's taking it out for me.
Do you know why it didn't work for me? And I feel like it maybe could have been done a different way. You might agree, you might not agree. But the fact that they were cutting back and forth between her kind of going through the process of being scammed and then being in the call center, and you've got this absolute dick of a character, just like, you know, being so cocky and like, you know, just being so showboat and just like a caricature of like what they feel is like a hip kind of like tech bro person or whatever. Like the fact that it was going back and forth between that was completely taking me out of the emotional sort of aspect of that scene. Whereas if it was like maybe like a slow reveal that she was being scammed or something like that without cutting to like whatever until like maybe the very end, it might have worked a little bit better for me. But you know, that scene didn't work at all.
I hear where you're coming from, and I do agree to an extent. I do think they were OD with showing the scammers' characteristics. But at the same time, it kind of does fall in line with the characteristics of these fraudsters, because it's like they're not nice people. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
there should be scumbags. The question is, should they be this cartoonish? And it's going to be better by making them so cartoonish.
Yeah, I can agree with that. That's why I do think they were OD with it.
It was down to 100, and I couldn't get with it.
So what is it that you guys disliked about the film? As in, like, what was there like something? I know you guys have kind of you said it, but was there anything in particular, a scene or a character in particular that really irks you?
For me, it's just like the whole thing, and there's a lot of examples, and we'll probably get through each of the examples. Like, so for example, the whole Beekeeper society that they had going on, like,
makes no sense.
It literally makes no sense, like literally at all. Like they were meant to like come in, and Daniel, you're probably like, no, you got like better memory than I do, but they're like meant to come in and fix a particular like sort of like hive or whatever like that when Law and Order's.
I mean, the basic idea is like they stand outside the law, they stand outside the system, and when the system stops functioning, they basically execute anybody who is the problem. Then the system kind of regenerates, and the beekeepers kind of go back into hiding until the system breaks again. First of all, the fact that there seems to be only one beekeeper at a time is weird. The current beekeeper who is sent to kill Adam Clay is such both so eccentric and such a loose cannon, but also so incredibly incompetent and just gets dispatched in 2 minutes without a fight. Like it would have been very different if there had been antagonists over the course of the movie, and then at the end there would have been some kind of showdown, or maybe 2/3 of the way through or whatever. But she shows up, pulls out her minigun, starts killing a bunch of people without. So I get that she's outside the law and whatever, but it's complete overkill and also completely ineffective, and he basically kills her without any kind of effort. Yeah. And then the beekeeper organization just says, yeah, your problem, good luck.
It takes away from the threat that the beekeepers are meant to have as well, because throughout the movie they're like, oh no, like the beekeeper's coming for you. You know, if they send a beekeeper, you're as good as dead. That's the last eyes you're gonna see. And then they send the current one, and it's like, oh, she just gets dealt with very quickly. So
yeah, I do agree with you guys. Her introduction was very anticlimactic, because the way that they built up to her, and then when she was finally introduced and she ends up dying in like 2 minutes, was like.
But it wasn't just her, it was everybody. So one of the big problems I had with this movie is that the beekeeper is a complete Mary Sue character. Really almost textbook. He doesn't have a personality other than being badass. He's good at everything. He never struggles. He never has any setbacks. He never has any doubts. He doesn't have a well-defined skill set. He's just the best at everything. Like, there's a reason why that archetype has the reputation that it has, because it's terrible writing and it leads to terrible stories. Adam Clay just shows up somewhere, and regardless of what the opposition is, he just steamrolls everybody. He wipes the floor with 50 SWAT people, whatever.
He literally walks up to a bunch of FBI people outside the building with no weapons and takes out everyone. I can't believe it. Man, sorry, Daniel, go on.
Yeah, I mean, like, and the whole movie is like that, right? He just walks up, and kills everybody and walks away. And I bought that in the call center, right? Nobody expects that there was armed security, but there were like security guards that they should not be a big obstacle to somebody with that kind of background. But then, like you say, the same pattern continues with the SWAT team, and it continues with the private security, and it continues with all the way up to the Secret Service. Like the guy basically walks into one of the most secure locations in the planet, basically, to kill the president of the United States. And it's basically effortless. Like there's no different, like he doesn't have a single setback, he doesn't have a single doubt, he doesn't have, any kind of struggle whatsoever. He knows exactly what to do at all times, and he does it, and he succeeds on the first try, and he doesn't break a sweat once. It's ridiculous. And it's not even about being realistic, it's about being interesting. Like I haven't seen The Transporter in a while, but I think he struggles quite a bit in that movie, right? And, gets pushed to his limits. And I don't know if any of you remember that movie better. It's been like 20 years since I watched it. But just to keep it within Jason Statham movies, fast-paced, light-hearted action movie doesn't automatically mean that the main character can't struggle with anything. There's a reason why those things are supposed to be there in a good story, because if you this is like a case study in what happens if you take all of that out and all you're left with is a one-dimensional power fantasy. That's what this is. And as a result, it's a boring story.
Sorry, I'm very glad that you mentioned about the whole Mary Sue thing as well, because that was going to be one of my points in terms of if you change the gender of the character and you make this a woman as opposed to a man, this movie would get absolutely panned. Like, there's no way that it would have. I think last time I checked, it had like 93% audience score, and it was like in the 60s, high 60s for the sort of critic scores on Rotten Tomatoes. There is no way that this movie would be lauded in any type of way if the character was a woman.
And it's worth pointing out that the Mary Sue is not a gendered archetype. It has been used as that in recent years, but the reason it's called a Mary Sue is just because the original character used to satirize that kind of character was a woman, and that was random. That wasn't the point of the character. So this is not about female characters. This is about characters. Yeah. And it gets abused a lot on both sides of that argument. Like that's going to be my go-to example of showing that label doesn't have anything to do with the gender of the character. I think you're right. If this had been a female lead character, then yeah, that argument would have come up much quicker. But that's because it's so popular to misuse that term.
Yeah, and like my point would be that people wouldn't have liked the movie. Because it's Jason Statham, I think it's carrying it.
Guys, I will agree with some of the stuff that you guys said. I do agree with the way that they portrayed Jason's character. I think he seemed like a Terminator. He seemed like he was untouchable. He was invincible. That's why I didn't like that. There's no challenge presented, not once. Near the end with the guy with no leg. What's his? I forgot his name. But yeah, maybe that presented some sort of threat, but not much. So I didn't like that. And I do agree, if it was a female lead, then yeah, I'm pretty sure it would have got slayed. I do agree with that. But I do understand why the Rotten Tomato scores might have been high for this, because I don't feel like I think we have to think about its selling point. And I do think their selling point is relying on emotional investment and its entertainment value. And for me, personally, like I said, it ticks those boxes. Now, the other stuff that you lot said, I agree 100%. Like, a lot of the times it didn't make sense. But like I said, it's selling point. And I think it successfully did that. Like, we're not there. Like, most of the times, like, we go blank. And when you go blank, you don't really spot the negative things or the things that don't make sense, because you're already having a good time. So you're not really thinking about, oh, okay, this doesn't make sense, but I'm having a good time anyways. You know what I'm saying? So I think when it comes to its selling point, that was its selling point, and they delivered. So I think that's how those critics and those viewers of the movie, why they may have rated this film highly in that regard, because they had fun. I honestly believe the reason why people enjoyed this, the reason why it's received high reviews, is because people had fun. I think that's the lens that they're viewing from. But I do see where you guys are coming from.
I mean, it's not a boring movie, right? But it's just nonsensical in terms of what's happening and why. And then what's left, like the fight choreography and the set pieces, I didn't think were that impressive.
The interesting thing you're saying there as well is that, like, the one time he actually fought someone that was a challenge was the only time I actually enjoyed the choreography. So the guy that with the one leg, that's the only time I enjoyed it. Everything else, like Daniel said, it was very basic. It was very boring. It was just, okay, he's going to beat up everyone, and it's just not really imaginative.
I don't really like this term, just turn your brain off. There's like a way to enjoy something that isn't terribly intellectual, but still care and thought and intelligence went into making what happened on screen makes sense. Like, you can put a lot of intelligence and effort and thought into the fight choreography and into the characterization. Like, the villains aren't even fun to hate because they're so archetypical in a bad way. Like, I just didn't believe any of it. Like, I didn't believe that the Derek Danforth character was the son of the president. It just, like, a person like that doesn't behave like that. And the fact that he didn't also wasn't a plot point. The minute that was revealed, I basically threw my hands up in the air and said, this is no longer worth thinking about. I understand that they kind of bought their way into politics, but even then it should be a plot point. Even then people should be commenting about how this is unbecoming of the son of the president and things like that, right? I think the movie just thinks that all bad people are the same. Scammers are the same as corrupt politicians, are the same as former CIA directors, are the same as mercenaries, right? Like, it's all kind of all the same because it's all like one big bucket labeled bad people. And I don't think any thought went into it beyond that, and that makes it boring to me.
Well, I'm actually dreading to ask this next question. Okay, what did you like about the film?
I like the first 15 minutes. This whole dynamic. I think like we mentioned it earlier, but like the editing was a bit wonky. Like, there was like a scene where the Eloise character, where they just put in a reaction shot from her, and it clearly wasn't in reaction to something that Jason Statham had said. And that took me, but that's not her fault, that's the editor's fault, right? But I liked her a lot. I liked how in just a very short amount of time they communicated the relationship between these two people and how fragile and vulnerable it is. And that's kind of it. And there were a couple of different scenes, like when they sent the goon squad to go after the beekeeper, and he basically murders them in his workshop. There was some neat shots in there, and the thing with the elevator when he breaks into the headquarters, like there was a neat idea there. I think he cuts the cable and that pulls down the SWAT team into the elevator shaft, and like but I can count on one hand the number of times I said, like, I wasn't even impressed. I just kind of said, my reaction just kind of was, oh yeah, that's kind of neat. And in an action movie where the whole appeal is the action, being kind of neat a few times is not enough.
Do you want some positives from me?
If you just have one.
Yeah. I would say we're literally scraping the barrel here. Like I mentioned before, the fight scene at the end between Adam Clay and the guy with the one leg. That's sort of an action scene I probably enjoyed the most. There was one joke, I've been sat here trying to remember. There was one joke that I really liked when he was on the phone to the president's son. There was one joke that he made, and it actually got a chuckle out of me, and I was like, okay, that was funny. I won't remember it off the top of my head, but there was one sort of funny interaction between them. I can't remember who the character was or what his relationship was to. I know he was kind of like the steward to sort of the president's son, or he was like kind of working at the company. But
oh yeah,
I don't know what type of relationship he had with the president.
So basically, the relationship was with, I think they were friends. They didn't really go into it, but it was So it was his mum. So he was close with his mum, pretty much, the president.
It wasn't clear whether it was like an ex or something like that. But essentially, him as a character, I actually really enjoyed. I felt like he was probably the best character in the movie in terms of like the way that he was like reacting to things, the way that he was like sort of trying to handle the situation that they were in. The fact that he was very realistic in terms of being to the son, like basically, you're screwed, like got us in a serious situation, like you're screwed.
Is that because the character's interesting, or because Jeremy Irons is a good actor and he figured, well, I'm here, I might as well act?
It's because Jeremy Irons is a good actor, and he did very well with what he was given. Basically, he was the highlight, sort of the character in the movie.
Like his whole demeanor was entertaining to watch, but the things he was saying, not so much.
Yeah.
Like this whole thing that the ex-director of the CIA is just work, even for a high paycheck, is working for this kind of outfit, even though he clearly understands how stupid it is. Didn't ring true. And a character like that doesn't need to have an elaborate motivation. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that kind of person would risk a lifetime of a very lucrative career just to make a little bit more money with these kind of small bit criminals. I don't know. It didn't ring true to me, and as a result, and he constantly was just telling everybody how incompetent and awful they were, and yet he still stuck around.
I think the reason why he stuck around was for his. I think he has undying love for the president.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were a thing at one point, and that's how they knew each other, and that's how he got the job, kind of to me.
Well, for me, I've kind of gone over already. What I liked about the film was the emotional investment value. I was emotionally driven by this film. So, like I said, I like the film. I don't even know if I can answer the next question. I don't even the amount of questions I had. I don't even think actually. You've kind
Do
of gone over it. You know what I'm saying? I
you,
was saying
you know,
highlight moment, your favorite performance, the performance that irks you the most. You've gone over everything. So
I mean, we can talk about the worst performance, which I think is the FBI agent.
oh yeah, we can.
I hated everything about her. It's terrible.
The
Like
daughter.
if the thesis of the movie is that law enforcement is broken and you have to resort to vigilantism, she's kind of the evidence of why that's true, because she's just such a terrible FBI agent.
I actually thought
Zero professionalism, zero constructive attitude, constantly giving attitude to everybody, but not like in a tense emotional moment. Like, I understand that right after her mother died, obviously that makes sense. But even after that, right, it just kept being the same. And then in the end, her big resolution is that she lets a serial killer go because she approves of his last kill. That's the end of the movie, which drives me crazy. Like, how can an FBI agent, even somebody who is disillusioned, like, why is she even that disillusioned in the system? That just was a couple of steps too far for me.
do you know, like, I personally thought on her character, she was terrible, by the way. She was awful. But I felt like
the writing of the performance was...
Yeah. If she's watching it, just know, guys, we're talking about the writing, just not your actual performance.
I mean, it can be both or either, depending on the case. And in this case, it's just how the character was written.
Yeah. But yeah, what I was going to say, it kind of disproves the idea of the movie as well, is because she's kind of solving the case, even though it was sort of massive coincidences, it was like she's kind of following along the case. She kind of sort of knows what's happening. She knows each of the next steps. So it's like, what was the purpose of the Beekeeper if eventually they're going to be able to solve the crime, solve the mystery, essentially?
In like 10 minutes.
In like 10 minutes, yeah, literally. So it was like, what's the point of the whole sort of Beekeeper thing in this particular situation? Because it's not needed. The FBI are on top of the case.
Yeah, and even if it takes 5 years to gather the evidence, that doesn't mean the system failed. It just means it was thorough. And that whole thing, like, this whole thing is even like an insult to like actual police work, right? Because this stuff isn't solved in a shootout and 10 minutes of research. It's solved in years of building a case, finding witnesses, gathering evidence, following leads. And this movie basically throws its hands up in the air and says, well, we don't get perfect justice instantly, therefore the system is broken and we need to burn it all down. Like, that's legitimately what bothers me.
From what you guys are saying, those were kind of addressed though, because this was more of a personal issue rather than him trying to solve, do what the law can't do. Because, he said in the beginning to the mom that no one's ever looked after me before. So, okay, we see the personal connection. And then after that, and he was an ex-beekeeper at that, so he wasn't really following the rules of the beekeeper in terms of the law. So he was just, okay, it's just revenge, my personal.
But if that was the case, then he would have stopped at the first call center, because he's got the people that attacked her. But then he's then identified that there's a whole system that needs to be taken care of that sort of are falling outside of the law. The FBI haven't been able to stop this, so that he's going to have to go in and destroy it, root it out, basically.
He's supposed to be sympathetic because he's rooting out corruption in the system.
But because this is personal to him, he's seen all of them involved in the woman's death.
They're all responsible, right? Because everybody was acting on somebody else's orders, right? But the movie frames it as, and the trailer does so as well, and the movie does frames it as the purpose of the Beekeeper is to smoke out corruption. Get rid of the bad apples in the barrel, and that's what he does. And he gets into it because it's personal, but then he just keeps going because he keeps finding corruption, and that is what is supposed to make him sympathetic.
Also, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. So he was shooting FBI agents at point blank range, and fair enough, in the movie they say that no one died in that. But I completely switched off at this point in terms of my engagement with the movie. But am I wrong in thinking that he was killing off Secret Service agents whilst trying to get to the president to root out? Sorry?
He must have, right?
He must have. And if I remember correctly, yes, he was killing off Secret Service agents. So what's the difference between them and the FBI? And in terms of if you want to root out corruption, you want to take out the bad guys. These are just men that signed up to do a job as a Secret Service to protect the president. Why are you killing everyone off? It kind of contradicts what he's meant to what he's meant to like, be and represent essentially.
But didn't he give them a choice?
I think he shot a couple of people in the leg. Or I think he mostly, there were a couple of instances where he disarmed people. But yeah, he killed a bunch of people. One of his distraction maneuvers is to rig a bunch of Secret Service vehicles with explosive and to blow them up while people are standing next to them. Like it's the Dawn of Justice argument. When you are that reckless and that violent, somebody is going to die, even if you don't intend it that way, right? If you show that level of violence, you are implying that people will die, and that movie got criticized for that as well. But the same logic applies here, right? Like people died in that maneuver. This is still an action movie, right? We're not outraged that there are casualties in an action movie, right? But the guy is supposed to be moral and supposed to right the wrongs of society, and and it is supposed to be a good thing that he stands outside the law and is not burned by things like due process. But then we see stuff like this, like you pointed out.
Before even going into our last thoughts, is there something for you that they should have done that you would have been satisfied with?
They should have just made the action scenes longer and more creative. Like if you're going to tell a terrible story, at least with like John Wick, sorry to go back to John Wick. John Wick knows it's not a great story, but people are there just for the action. So they elongate it. They give you like, really long action set pieces, and they make it very creative. If you know you're going to give us a very wishy-washy story, just make the action long. I was generally in the cinema thinking, please just make the action longer. Please, like, don't make me have to sit here and think about the story that you're trying to tell. Because, again, as I was saying, like, at the start, it was like a very, like, goofy, very, like, childish story. And then towards the latter half of the movie, it wanted to take itself a little bit more serious than what it actually was. And it just completely fell flat on its face.
And I think the John Wick comparison is good because that's also a revenge story that's also very violent. But it works, I think, for a couple of reasons. One of them is that the action is very competent and that it constructs a scenario in which we are on the side of the protagonist, right? Like he kills gangsters and mobsters and people who, deserve to die because we know that, we know what kind of people they are. But here it's a lot more indiscriminate. And that actually brings me to one question I wanted to bring up, which is, I think we all like superhero movies, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole thing about superheroes is that they are vigilantes, right? They stand outside the law. They're not accountable to anybody. They're hyper violent. Why is that okay, but why are we not okay with it in this movie? And I have an answer to that. I'm just curious if that comparison occurred to the two of you, because it's like if you gave the Beekeeper superpowers, it would be a superhero movie, right?
Yeah, because like in a superhero movie, typically they're fighting supervillains, people, villains that, can't be handled by, your regular police. They're shooting them with their guns. Like, for example, like General Zod in sort of Man of Steel, for example, like the police are shooting them, they can't do anything. So you need the superhero to step in and actually save the day in that particular situation. Whereas in this, they're going after scammers that are scamming old people who could quite easily be found out by regular FBI agents.
I don't know if we're moving into a new age. I don't know if this has always been, but I feel like now we're in a time where a lot of people are more on the side of the villain than the actual superhero. And the reason why I say that, because I think they relate more to the villain rather than the superhero is made as this symbolic form of perfection, which none of us are. So, yeah, sorry, I just want to add that.
I feel like people relate to well-written villains because, you get villains like Darben in the Marvel, so you get villains like the elf from like Thor: The Dark World that are very like one note. It's like people don't care about like one note characters, and typically a protagonist is always like super positive, always on the right side of thing, always making the right choice and things like that as well. Whereas a villain is when done well is a very like complex character. They have the right ideas, but they're going about it maybe an immoral way essentially, which is why people probably they're like, do you know what? I don't agree with the methods that you're using, but I understand what you're trying to do. So like for Thanos, for example, where he wants to make sure that there's enough resources for everyone across the universe. He's going about it the wrong way, but he's got the right motivation. He's got the right ideas behind him. And on top of that, he's a very well-written character. And on top of that, he's a badass. He's shown to be very like intimidating and menacing as well. So I feel like that's why people probably lean more towards the villains. I'm definitely one of those people that leans more towards villains as well.
I've got a slightly different take on this. I think it's just that over time, the idea of who's a hero and who's a villain shifts. I saw one Reddit comment in, looking up some, like getting a feel for what people think about the movie and if they liked it, why they like it. And one comment really stood out to me, and that was something to the effect of the person gave a couple of different reasons, and one of them was it dunks on some of my favorite demographics to hate, which presumably means scammers, corrupt politicians, and police. If you have that perspective, then this movie makes perfect sense because it's all bad people. And I think it's less that people are rooting for a villain, because I don't think anybody who likes this movie thinks of Adam Clay as a villain. I think they're saying finally somebody's doing something. I think that's the perspective. And there have been many movies like this, many movies about police corruption, many movies about corrupt politicians, many movies about just revenge stories. But they tend to put more effort into justifying why the regular way doesn't work, and this movie just doesn't. It just says that's the case.
I feel like they need to lean into more the moral grey area as well for protagonists, for heroes moving forward. That's completely separate to this, but there has to be a difficult choice at some point for a hero to make, and they might not always make the right choice, but they're doing it for the right reasons. And having that morally grey sort of aspect of the hero just makes them a little bit more interesting, a little bit more nuanced, and probably a little bit more likable as well to people.
And that's completely missing here. Like he is always correct, and he always it is never questioned whether or not he's on the right path. And he gets vindicated in the end by the FBI agent, right? Who is supposed to be a sympathetic character through and through, and she approves of his killing spree in the end by letting him go. I think that's the part where the movie really loses me, is that it's this indiscriminate killing spree with no nuance in terms of who's the enemy, and it doesn't justify why this is necessary. But it also positions the protagonist as being an unambiguously good guy, where everybody he kills is a bad guy with no collateral damage and no wrong decisions. Like he doesn't struggle with, or like he doesn't even try to he tries a little bit to minimize it, but he never says, okay, I can't just storm this building because there's 20 police officers in front, and they haven't done, they're not part of this company I'm going after, so they're not my target, and therefore I'm going to go find some other way to get in, right? He just walks up and beats everybody up, and we're supposed to cheer that.
He's also very stupid as well in terms of how he goes about resolving the case, and I just had to get this in there as well. In terms of how he tries to find who's actually heading up all of these call centers, the first call center he goes into, he smashes up the place. He sort of beats up the kind of tech, I forget the character's name, beats up the tech bro, whatever like that, and lets him go, whatever, goes back to his beekeeping. Those people then come to the farm. He kills off all of the guy's goons, and then all he does is he chops off the guy's fingers, lets him go again. But then it turns out that he was following him. And when he follows him, he can see that the guy's on the phone. He's on the phone to the head boss, crying, complaining about, this guy's unstoppable or whatever. And instead of interrogating him to find out who's actually in charge, because at that point, the guy's probably scared and will tell you everything. Instead of doing that, he ties him to a car and yoinks him off a bridge, completely
killing him in the end.
We
never see him again.
All to then go and find another call center. He goes and finds another call center just to then interrogate that guy, when you could have saved yourself so much time by just getting this information from this first guy. But the movie needed more runtime. Basically, the movie needed more runtime, so he made this absolutely stupid decision to kill this first guy to then just go do the same thing over again and then get the actual information from the second call center.
Personally, for me, I think something that they could have improved, or something I was actually surprised that they didn't go into more, was dilemma, because the lack of dilemma in this was. Yeah, especially with the daughter, the FBI agent. I thought dilemma would be presenting her a lot, obviously, between going after Adam and following the law. And it was only simmers that were shown, and I was like, that should have been her biggest conflict. But the only time where that conflict was presented was at the end, like you guys said, where she was like, okay, now she's in a situation. Is she gonna let him go, or is she gonna arrest him? That's the only time. But throughout the film was we only saw bits of it, but we didn't really see she was battling anything. It was just, okay, I'm just going with the flow. I know my job. This is what I need to do. And then at the end is when the dilemma was presented. I was like, oh wow, they should have kind of gone into that more. That's something which I do think they should have improved on.
And there are stories where like a cop lets the vigilante go in the end because they realize that there's a righteous cause involved. Like, but at that point, the movie should have justified that. It should have got me on board with both people's perspectives.
They really should have simplified the story as well. They tried to go through this whole route of actually getting a president involved, also he can sort of storm this unbreakable place where he shouldn't ever be able to sort of break into. Essentially, if they'd just kept it a little bit more grounded in a sense of sort of just like some scammers, and maybe there was like a few sort of bosses and stuff like that were sort of kind of behind it and running it as well. That would have it would have like helped the story a little bit more instead of sort of trying to be this extravagant thing, which it wasn't. It felt very short.
I think actually fixing the movie requires making a different movie, but the movie could have been much better if the Queen hadn't been the president. That is a whole different story, and it's stupid for its own reasons. And the fact that she's supposedly completely innocent and naive in all of this, had no idea, that there's crime going on in this establishment, and I'm shocked, and all nonsense. Like, at least make her a villain. Like, even at least make her a figure that has risen in that kind of business and then acquired enough money to buy herself into politics. Like, but they didn't even do that, right? They had to make her sympathetic in the end and make the son real villain. If the entire thing had just been about a small scammer operation, where if you give them half a chance, they will just disappear, into nothing and come back under different shell companies 2 years later, and then they will start this operation all over again. I think if it had been left at that level, I think I would have enjoyed the movie more, because then it's kind of operating on a level where it's more understandable why the law is maybe not adequate or something. But the entire global system is corrupt, and all the politicians are in on it. Basically, that's just a couple of steps too far. But I think if I could make any one change, I would have kept it as this little fly-by-night scammer operation that tries to go into hiding and then is basically hunted down by this ex-special forces guy. That's a fine story, but they didn't leave it at that.
Feels like they had the idea of like the Beekeeper, and then sort of them trying to sort of kill the queen of the hive and whatever, and then they had the idea of the queen, and they were like, how cool can we make the queen? And then someone said, we should make her the president, and they were like, yeah, it's a great idea. It's like, no, it's not. It's really not. You shouldn't have done that. You should have left it well alone.
Last thoughts and ratings.
I don't know. I give it like 50 milliwicks.
What? Say that again.
Don't even know what that means.
Like 1 wick is the quality of the John Wick movie, and this is like 50 milliwicks.
Oh, damn.
Okay. Cool. I'm gonna keep mine simple. This is a 1 out of 10 for me. It's really difficult to say that as well, because I know so many people are gonna go in there and they're going to enjoy the movie and they're gonna be like, what the hell am I talking about? But for me personally, this is a 1 out of 10. I never want to see any type of movie like this ever again in my life.
Well, for me, guys, I've seen this film in a different lens. Provided the entertainment value, of course. When it comes to its entertainment value and its emotional investment, it ticks the box for me. So I give this one a 7 out of 10.
I feel bad, man. I feel like you had some positive things to say, and we just didn't let you get off.
No, listen, this is good, man, because sometimes we're not going to agree on films. I think this is probably the first review that we've done where we would. Oh, to be fair, you two kind of agreed with each other, but still, I think this is probably one where it was like, we actually, clashing heads, because other films we kind of agreed on each other, except for Night Swim.
But we don't really seem to disagree about what the movie is like. It's more that we probably think that those criticisms are a bigger deal.
Yeah, I think you can see past it more than we can.
Okay. Yeah.
Like for me, like I said this last week, that I don't think genre is an excuse. Any genre can be good or bad, smart or stupid, and an action movie can make sense, and I think is better for it. And this one just isn't. And
if you haven't yet, check out our video on why we do movie reviews. You'll understand this one a little bit more as well.
Yeah, definitely. Tune into that. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening to us today. We'll catch you next week.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as well.
Bye-bye.
Au revoir.
Ciao.